Welcome back to the Building the Pride. I am your host, Drew, coming at you in 1080p, apparently according to the show. Unfortunately, I'm coming to you live solo yet again. Mike had to work. But he and I and guests will be performing, well, not performing, but doing our multi-man mock draft this coming Monday, April 20th at 7 o'clock. So if you're interested, tune in for that and watch your notifications to see if it gets posted, when it gets posted. That'll be 2 rounds. When does this stream begin? I try and do it on Fridays at noon. The multi-man mock should be Monday at 7 p.m. On this station, the channel. So if you're interested in that, keep an eye out for it. Should be a lot of fun. I think we have 7 people this year. One of them had to drop out. Scheduling. So should be a lot of fun. Today, I'd like to do 2 things. I'd like to do a review of all of the trades that Brad Holmes has made since he became general manager of the Detroit Lions. And just before the show, I was on Twitter, and I noticed, let me quantify or clarify this a little bit. I shoot for Friday at noon. I'm not always able to make that happen. So if you check in at Friday at noon or have your notifications on, that should be when it happens most of the time. But if I have a scheduling conflict, like a doctor's appointment or something like that, I would rather do the show at a different day and time than not do the show. So you might get a surprise Thursday show. And then sometimes I just jump on because I have a thought and I want to talk about it. So I try and maintain some level of consistency to varying degrees of success. I'm just always happy whenever anybody shows up in the stream. So, but back to what I was going to talk about today. I was just on Twitter and I saw a post from Jason over at Over the Cap, and he said he has compiled some information on looking at positional draft successes and free agent availability in the NFL. And I thought this might be interesting to look at. Things are pretty good. I mean, it's not winter anymore. It's nice outside. I went outside today and touched grass, as they say. And I hope everybody else is doing well. I mean, Joseph and Detroit Fan Man, I hope you guys are doing real well. We're getting real close to the NFL draft, and that's kind of my Christmas / birthday / holiday that I care the most about. I'd much rather watch the NFL draft than celebrate my birthday. So I'm getting excited about that. I hope you guys are getting excited about that too. I will say though, I cannot remember being less excited for a draft class than this one. But that doesn't matter. I'm still going to get excited when it actually does happen, and I'll follow all 7 rounds, smoking grass as I watch. Well, I mean, to each their own, I don't partake myself. I'm a person of such low willpower that if I try something and like it, I can't really stop myself from continuing to do it. It's Draftmas season. Draftmas songs for 3 days of Draftmas. So I don't know if you guys have ever watched our live stream during the first round of the draft, but myself, Mike, of course, and our friend Brian all get together and watch the first round, and we bet on every pick. So we all throw $1 into the pool, and then we all select a player that we think whichever team is drafting will take. And then we have rules for dividing up who gets the money. And then now Mike's younger son and Brian's son are participating with us. So now we're going up to, we have 5 people this year. And I think that'll be good because, oh, I appreciate that, Joseph. Yeah. So it is a long watch. It's 4 hours typically. This year, however, the NFL has shaved down the time between picks from 10 minutes to 8 minutes, which should save around an hour of time, which is great because as I get older, I want to go to bed earlier. So anyways, let's jump into this a little bit here. Let's get this all set up for me. I wish Mike was here to do this stuff. He's always really good at the prep. Okay, so Jason at Over the Cap put this together. And what it is a chart of where people or teams, NFL teams, find players in the draft and in free agency. Oops, wrong way. Here we go. So let's see. So this list right here is where each of the top 10 players were drafted by salary. So if you look at the top 10 corners by salary, where were they drafted? Well, 90% came in round 1, 10% came in rounds 4 or 5. And then he's listed them here by percentages. So as you might think, corner, edge, left tackle, quarterback, wide receiver, interior D-line, right tackle, running back, linebacker, guard, safety, tight end, center, all in decreasing likelihood of finding a top 10 player at that position in the first round. And then it breaks it out. So, if this was a graph, it'd be a declining line, right? So, and I think that that's interesting because as fans, we so often kind of rail and rant against the idea that well, why aren't they fixing the team? Why can't they go out and fix the team? Like, let's win the Super Bowl. Like, let's go all in. Let's find the answers to these deficiencies in the roster, either at a position or on a talent level, or what have you, like skill sets or like playmakers. Like, let's go out and find these guys. Well, okay, so the first question that I'm sure talent evaluators ask themselves is, where can you find them? And so the draft is a very straightforward place to go look, but also free agency. And so one thing that Brad Holmes has shown over his tenure in Detroit is that when it comes to free agency, he tends towards short-term, veteran minimum, maybe you could describe them as prove-it contracts for a variety of players. I think this is primarily where Detroit gets their veteran presence is free agency. And it's a nice way to keep the back end of the roster, trim when it comes to how much money you're dedicating to players that aren't going to see the field for the kind of snap counts that starters are going to get. Yes, right. Tight ends at 40% in round 4 or 5. So I think a good example of this is that 3 or 4 years ago, the Ravens had multiple 4th round picks, and they got both Isaiah Likely and Charlie Kolar, both who signed not big, but off-season contracts to go to other teams. They found both of those players in the 4th round. And then I think recently, for an NFC North perspective, Green Bay, dipped twice into the tight end market in the draft just a couple of years ago to get Tucker Kraft and what is the other kid's name? But they were, both of those players for Green Bay have been successful, and Tucker Kraft is a real solid tight end, and they got a great value, day 3 value on him. Dumb question, I probably just misunderstood, but this is a top 10 list with percentage saying how many were taken in each group. So 9 cornerbacks were first round picks in the top 10. Why do OCs get decimals? I'm assuming it's just because of the way that like math worked out. It was probably something like 1 out of 11 or something to that effect. So, but guess what, guys? Watch this. I'm going to blow your minds. Just I hope you're sitting down. If we expand the list to include the top 20 highest paid players at each position, the list really changes. There's like a lot of movement on this list. So we see quarterback now has gone to number 1, right? That's kind of what everybody would expect. Like, where do you anticipate finding your quarterback in the draft? Round 1, probably very high up in round 1, right? So then interior defensive line makes a huge jump. Edge is right there. Left tackle made a jump. Wide receiver took a dip. Corner took a big dip. It got halved, right? 90 to 45%. Right tackle, pretty much the same spot. Linebacker, guard, running back, center bumped up. Tight end, and then safeties at the bottom. And so what I think is interesting about this list in particular is this is what you would kind of expect to see. Not exactly, obviously, but like this is kind of what the trend line that you would expect to see from a positional value perspective is. So where are teams putting the money, right? So if you were to, let's say that every player in the NFL was immediately put back into free agency and teams were given their entire salary cap, and you're going to basically sign your whole team like you would draft a fantasy football team, right? You would have to go out and pay market rates for every player based upon their overall talent, right? So it would make sense then that if you have an opportunity to acquire a player below market rate, the best place to do that, and really the only place to do that, is the NFL draft. So what this table highlights pretty well is where are teams putting their money, right? That's the only thing that positional value really is. It's just a ranking, just chipped in stone, etched in stone. Where are teams putting their ranking? Let's figure it out and just list that. It's not so much like, oh, every team should do this. It's more of this is what teams are doing when it comes to giving money to players. And so if we know where the money is being prioritized across different positions, those should be the positions that premium draft resources are used on. And that's what these tables are showing to be true. So like, where are teams finding the top 10 players of their position, the top 20 players of their position? But what I want to do, like, that's just kind of a restatement of, I think, pretty obvious things for anybody that follows the NFL and more than just a only on Sundays kind of mentality. So if you marry this information, then what you should see, and I think what we've seen a number of times in Detroit, is it's relatively straightforward to go out into free agency and find certain positions. Certain groups make it to free agency, other groups do not, right? And now with things like with avenues like the franchise tag and 5th-year options and stuff like that, so few quality high position value players make it to actual free agency, right? So this year, Trey Hendrickson actually made it to free agency. Like, I know he's 30 or 31, but this is a guy that's led the NFL in sacks. I think 2 out of the last 3 seasons. He's been excellent in his career. And like, he legitimately made it to the free agency market, and he got a pretty big contract from Baltimore. So, and like, the thing that confuses me about Brad Holmes is that he becomes locked in on players. And like, when he becomes locked in on players, he tends to trade up to go get them. And the problem that I have with the trade up is that, like, I feel like those picks, mostly our round 3 picks, could be arguably better spent filling out the bottom third of the roster, so to speak. And like and I still think third round picks have an opportunity to start for Detroit, depending on what path to the field that those positions actually have. So if we're looking at if we are looking at what how we actually find different positions in free agency, there's a great percentage chance. Let's see, what does it say here? Coupling this information with free agency availability is also critical. The second avenue to team building is free agency. What positions are actually available with high quality players? Let's break it down for the top 20 salaries in the league who were available in free agency. So if you want to find quality level players at positions, these are the positions that teams should go into free agency targeting, because the overall talent level per dollar spent in free agency is greater. So like, where do you find the most value? Like, you can find linebackers, centers, running backs, guards, safeties, right? And then I do think it's interesting that tight end is right in between right tackles and quarterbacks. I was actually kind of surprised to see quarterback this high or low, depending on how you want to look at it. But I guess that there are a bunch of like journeyman quarterbacks that change teams every year, right? So what I am saying is, like, if I was the general manager of the Detroit Lions, I would be looking at information like this and planning what I'm going to do in free agency around this. Like, so Alex Anzalone, they drew a line in the sand to say, we're happy to have you at this price point, and if you want more than that, you're happy to explore free agency. He found more money, he's gone. So Tampa Bay found a starting caliber linebacker on a relatively cheap deal, $8.5 million, on the free agency market. So Alex Anzalone is a part of this 75%, if he's in the top 20 salaries or whatever of the linebacking group, which he may not be, but like Detroit went out and they signed a center, they went out and they found a running back, they've signed guards, and like a bunch of safeties. Right now, I think Detroit has 8 safeties on their roster. So if anybody out there was interested in like Detroit moving to like a more nickel base, I think this is the year that it's going to happen. This time last year, they had 8 linebackers on the roster. Now I believe they only have 4. So I think that we are in line to see a heavier nickel group be on the main roster, the 53-man roster. Take your CB in the first round. If Jermod McCoy was there at pick 17, you got to think about it. So what I would like to see Brad do, if Brad Holmes were to behave in the following way, I think that I would not be able to say anything other than being completely supportive of his moves. If Brad went out each year and was like, we need a linebacker, we need a backup center, we need our starting center, we may need to pick up a running back and get some guard depth. Oh, and I might need 1 or 2 more safeties, like just to round out the 90-man roster or what have you. Like, I'm going to go out and get those in free agency, right? And then occasionally you will see Brad sign a day one free agent. Like DJ Reed was a very recent, day one guy. Explain the interior line number. I think that what this is saying is that top line, top 20 salaried interior defensive linemen in the NFL do not make it to free agency. So let's examine that, right? So when was the last time that we saw a premier interior defensive lineman make it to free agency? There's always the guys that are like, this guy's an excellent run stuffer, or he's a 2-gapper, or this guy fits well, or they follow a coach who got a different job opportunity or something to that effect, right? But like Justin Madubuike from the Ravens his contract was up. He never actually made it to free agency, right? They figured out an extension beforehand. Like Dexter Lawrence, I don't remember if he was traded to the Giants or if he signed in free agency, but like those players, and there's not a ton of them, right? I mean, there's not a ton of, I think that's another part of this is that the top 20 list for wide receivers might be chock full, right, of guys with big salaries. But the average salary amount for the top 20 interior defensive linemen might look vastly different than, like, say, the wide receiver top 20, not just in overall numbers, but how close those contracts are together. If we're talking about wide receivers, it could be like a $5 to $10 million gap per year between like the number 2 guy and the number 18 guy. But like it might be $9 million in the difference between the number 2 interior defensive lineman and like the number 6 interior defensive lineman. Like there's just a lot of variability. I think in that the way that he has split up those guys in this particular poll. But how I read this list from top to bottom is how likely is it that a worthwhile player makes it to free agency from this position group? And like wide receivers kind of interesting because like even you have a guy like Brandon Ayuk, he's still not in free agency. Like the Niners haven't cut him. He's still on their roster. They're hoping to trade for him. I wouldn't trade a bag of beans for Brandon Ayuk right now, but like he doesn't just make it to free agency. Like T. Higgins is a good example, right? Like 2 years in a row, T. Higgins was like, he's going to make it to free agency. He's going to make it to free agency, and he's going to be one of the highest paid wide receivers on the market. And they tagged him twice, I believe, right? So wide receivers, good ones, almost never make it to free agency. Linebacker makes it there all the time. And I think that the linebacker thing is pretty fluid too, because I think that the top 20 linebackers, that list will change way more than the top 20 wide receivers. So anyways, I thought this was interesting because what it says to me is go get your linebackers, centers, running backs, guards, safeties in free agency. And then in the first round, spend your first round picks on quarterbacks, tackles, edge rushers. And then on day 2, spend your picks on corners, wide receivers, interior defensive linemen, interior offensive linemen, tight ends, that kind of stuff. And you might just be high, Joseph. I'm not sure. So I mean, like, so like if this was just like, I'm not even saying like a gospel or anything, but if this was just like a guideline for how NFL teams approached roster construction, I would find it, as a fan, I would find it easier to understand what Brad Holmes is doing if he adhered to something like this and then said, like, he was just interviewed. He just had a press conference prior to the draft, right, which he talked for like 20 or 25 minutes. And he did his typical Brad thing where he's not going to give out too much information or like commit too hard to any one thing. But like if someone asked him, like, how do you approach free agency in the draft? He could say, well, like, he could give an answer that's like, well, you see certain positions make it to free agency where it's more worthwhile to sign, one of the top centers on the market. Like last year we saw, like this year we saw Tyler Linderbaum blow the center market AAV out of the water, right? Like it's not even close. Like he's 50% higher than the next highest guy. And like last year, Drew Dahlman went to the Bears and got a great deal, right? So like centers can move. And like these are some of the top guys on the market. Like maybe not the first or second guys, but like 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or 3, 4, 5, 6, something like that. Those guys can actually change teams. And so Brad could, if Brad followed, which he doesn't, but if Brad followed this structure, he could give legitimate answers to the press. And like to a degree, satiate fans like me when we want to know, like, how are you doing this? Like what's the secret and recipe in the or the secret ingredient in the recipe, like that kind of thing. But like he's so cryptic and we're left to guess so much that it really makes it difficult to like feel confident. Like I have no idea what he's going to do next Thursday. So, I mean, could he trade up, trade back, take a tackle, take an edge? I would bet on none of that. I would bet on just like he's going to do something that I would never have guessed possible, right? Because that feels more like Brad Holmes than making the like straightforward, logical, this is very clear to me kind of move. And I keep struggling to understand him, and I'm not able to. And so I, at least sitting here and talking about what I'm thinking about, I think helps me kind of contextualize what might be going on. Like sometimes it just helps to say things out loud or talk to people about it. And you guys are good listeners. So here's Pro Football Reference. I'm going to try and find. Yeah, okay. So guys, help me out with this. So I'm going to start reviewing every trade that Brad Holmes has made since he became GM, okay? And you tell me what you think, because I'm gonna tell you whether or not I think these were good trades or are quote unquote not good trades to have made, right? Okay, so the very first trade that he makes, he gets hired. He trades the 235th pick in the draft for Michael Brockers. I mean, a 7th round pick at 235 is roughly 20 picks before the draft is over. Not a ton of value in 7th round picks. I know you guys can't probably read this, but I physically cannot make it any bigger. Let's see if I get rid of that, if that'll help a little bit. So I am in favor, I guess, of these kinds of trades. Like if you're going to take a 7th round pick, the odds that player makes your roster, even when you're bad, is shockingly low, right? So it's trading that pick for any kind of established NFL talent has got to be more valuable than just taking a lottery ticket on someone that you've already not drafted 6 times, right? So I guess I'm technically in favor of the Michael Brockers pick, even though he didn't play much and it didn't really work out much. I mean, he was on the team when the team was bad, right? He was basically a stepping stone. All right, so here's the big trade that got everything started off. The Rams trade for Matthew Stafford. The Lions get Jared Goff, a 2021 third-round pick, which was used on Ife Melifonwu, a 2022 first-round pick, and a 2023 first-round pick. So, like, they didn't get those picks in the first year of the regime. It was years 2 and 3. So great value for Matthew Stafford, right? You got a quarterback that, I mean, we're talking about a legitimate quarterback, a top, I would call Goff anywhere between the top 12 and 16 quarterback in the NFL, a third-round pick, and then 2 firsts. Like, that's solid value. And based upon how I know that those picks were used, I have to say that I think that the Lions got pretty good value for out of the Matthew Stafford trade. And, of course, he got great value. He's been an MVP, I believe, right? He won MVP this year. And he's an MVP, and he's won a Super Bowl. Okay, so here we go. Traded later that year, a couple months later, they traded a 5th round and a 7th round pick for, hang on, how's that? Oh, no, this is traded a 5th round pick and a 2022 4th round pick to the Browns for a 2021 4th and a 2021 7th. 5th and 4th for 4th and 7th. Oh, he traded down. So this is the Derek Barnes trade, right? So he traded down in the draft, and this is the pick that ended up being Derek Barnes. So what did he end up doing? So the picks that he traded to the Browns were used on Tony Fields and Dameon Pierce, which are guys that are not a part of the Browns' future. However, Derek Barnes is a player that they signed to a second contract. So you'd have to argue that he found value on that one. Multiple sport guys, good tape and team leader, Boy Scout types, maybe doubted or injured slow 40 times. Yep. So definitely Brad Holmes is looking for high character, right? High character, proven talent. And if like you are a team captain, like he's going to eat that up, right? And if he feels that like he can draft you at a position or a spot in the draft where you're going to outperform your draft position, he's going to do that. And there's 1,000 examples of that. Jameson Williams, Levi Muzurike, who else? Josh Paschal. Who else was banged up during the draft and they took anyways? I'm trying to think. Was Brian Branch banged up heading into the draft? Hendon Hooker, there's one. Not a lot of them work out because they're hurt, or whatever, and that's difficult to come back from. But like Brad has proven that he will spend a pick on a player who's for whatever reason his draft position has fallen, right? Character concerns, he doesn't usually touch those guys. But like if you can heal from an injury and they feel good about that, yeah, they'll take you. And then the last one here is he traded a 22 fifth-round pick and a conditional 22 seventh to the Broncos for Trinity Benson and a 6th-round pick. So this trade just didn't work out well for the Lions. Like a 5th and a 7th for Trinity Benson is just not good. Trinity Benson didn't do anything here. I understand taking the risk. Branch and St. Brown had slow 40 times. That's a good point. 40's not everything, right? So the next year, 2022, this was the big move up for JMO. He traded a 1st-round pick, 32, 2nd-round pick, 34, and a 2022 3rd-round pick for the Vikings picks number 12 and 46. So Lewis Cine was an absolute bust for the Vikings. Christian Watson's been a good player for them. I don't know what the status of Brian Asamoah is on their roster, but Jameson Williams is our number 2 wide receiver. And Josh Paschal was on the roster for his rookie deal, and then they cut him. So, debatable. Traded a 2022 6th-round pick to the Eagles for their 6th-round pick and a 7th-round pick. So they traded down. They picked up Malcolm Rodriguez and Chase Lucas. Now, Chase Lucas didn't really stick on the Lions, but he did go to the Niners and I think was a starter for most of a season. So I think that you could make the argument that like Brad found 2 guys, Rodrigo and Lucas, who were, I would say, somewhat better than your average backup out of 6th-round picks. So good job. I like that. I'd call that a win. And then before the trade deadline, traded TJ Hawkinson, a 2023 4th and a 2024 4th to the Vikings for a 2nd-round pick and a 3rd-round pick. In which I do want to point out that the TJ Hawkinson trade, we dumped TJ Hawkinson before he needed a contract extension. But other than that, we got nothing out of that trade. Like we traded both picks that the Vikings gave us to other teams. So it's hard to evaluate how effective that trade was. What they really wanted was to get rid of Hawkinson. So now here's the 2023 draft. And now this is Brad's 3rd draft. And now the trades start to absolutely skyrocket. So let's take a look. He traded Jeff Okudah to the Falcons for a 5th-round pick. That's fine. So this is the Jahmyr Gibbs trade. Traded the 6th overall pick and a third round pick to the Cardinals for the 12th pick, a second round pick, and a fifth round pick. So this trade down netted them both Jahmyr Gibbs and Sam Laporta. And it only happened because the Seahawks took Devin Witherspoon at 5. So they didn't want to take Jalen Carter at 6. That's what I would have done. But he traded down. So we ended up with Gibbs and Laporta out of this trade. So a round later or so, he traded the 48th pick and a fifth round pick to move up 3 spots to get Brian Branch. Great. Brian Branch has been a good player. Fifth round pick is not that significant. Traded a second round pick. This is the pick from the Vikings. And a 6th round pick for a second round pick, which they traded away, a 4th round pick, and a 7th round pick. So, like, this was the way that I read this trade is that he didn't like the scenario that he was in and just got out of it. And, like, he just wanted out, so he got out, and that's fine. But, like, it's a nearly impossible to trade to ascertain how much value Detroit got from it because there's no players that are still on the team from it. So next we traded a second round pick and a 6th round pick for a 3rd round pick and a 5th round pick. So traded down, picked up Hendon Hooker, and then traded the other pick. So, like, he traded down to get Hendon Hooker, basically. Traded a 4th round pick, a 5th round pick, and another 5th round pick for a 3rd round pick that he used on Broderick Martin. And this trade was really, really expensive. Not only because Broderick Martin did not work out, but the trade value, the trade chips involved from both teams, it's completely lopsided in Arizona's favor. So Brad really paid through the nose to be able to draft Broderick Martin, and then to have it not work out was a real shame. Then he traded DeAndre Swift and a 7th round pick to the Eagles for a 7th round pick and a 4th round pick. He traded a 7th round pick to the Jags for kicker Riley Patterson, who kicked for us for a year. Traded a conditional 25 6th round pick to the Jets for Denzel Mims. Okay. Denzel Mims didn't do much. I don't really remember him playing often. And then he traded a 6th round pick to the Browns for Donovan Peoples-Jones, who was on the roster for around a year. And then I think he was on the practice squad for a year. So not a huge feather in the cap, but also not terrible. 2024. This is the Terrion Arnold draft. So trade a 3rd round pick and a 6th round pick for a 6th round pick. Oh, for Carlton Davis and 2 6. So he traded a 3rd for Carlton Davis and 2 6 round picks. That's pretty good value. It would have been nice if Carlton Davis would have re-signed. And, like, so another thing that I think that we can infer about Brad Holmes is that even if he trades for you, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to get extended. So interesting to keep an eye on. So this is the Terrion Arnold pick here. He trades the 29th pick overall and a 3rd to move up 5 spots to get Terrion Arnold. And he took a 7th round pick to balance it out. A little bit later, he trades a 3rd round pick to the Jets. What does he do? He trades our future 3rd to the Jets for their 4th round pick to take Giovanni Manu. This has been an absolute debacle of a trade because Giovanni Manu hasn't seen the field in any way, shape, or form. Traded a 5th round pick, a 6th round pick, and a 4th round pick to the Eagles for a 4th rounder and a 6th rounder, which became Sione Vaki and Christian Mahogany. So Sione Vaki has been a solid special teams contributor, and Christian Mahogany is a starter. So this has got to be considered a good trade. And then traded a 6th rounder and a 7th rounder for the Texans 6. So he traded up to take Mekhi Wingo, traded a 6th round pick and a 2025 5th rounder for Zadarius Smith, a 7th rounder, and Yaha Black. So Zadarius Smith filled in nicely for Aiden Hutchinson while he was recovering from a broken leg. They opted not to extend him for like relatively not a lot of money. So you have to ask, what if Manu plays this year? Tell me what you think his path to the field is. Is it at right tackle? Is it at swing tackle? Because I don't see how he gets on the field. Okay, 2025. He trades a 2nd and a 4th to the Broncos for a 2nd, which he uses to take Tate Ratledge, and he picks up a 7th in addition. All right, so he trades up to get Ratledge. He traded a 25 third, a 26 third, and a 26 third to the Jags to take Isaac TeSlaa and 2 6th-round picks. This trade, I like Isaac TeSlaa quite a lot. I thought he showed a completely different skill set than what's on the roster. He had a couple of contested catches, which I love seeing, and scored some touchdowns, right? Some pretty spectacular touchdowns. And he's not worth 3 third-round picks. He's like, I don't even think that Brad traded for him with the idea that like he's going to be your 5th pass catcher. I think that Brad Holmes traded for Isaac TeSlaa because Isaac TeSlaa has a skill set that no one else on the roster has. And Brad wanted the skill set on the team, which if that is true, then I am surprised that he played as little as he did last year. He just outsnapped Khalif Raymond. Oh, big yawn. Sorry. I didn't sleep very much last night. He needs to be on the field a lot, like 800 snaps, something like that. This year, I think, to start to justify 3 third-round picks. So Joseph, I have a bet going with a friend that I don't think Giovanni Manu will be on the roster week 1. So, but I hope you're right, and he comes through. Then he traded a 6th-round pick and a 7th-round pick to move up into the 5th for Miles Frazier. Traded Tim Patrick to the Jags for a 6th-round pick this year. So he traded up for Miles Frazier. He got some depth. Okay. Not terrible. Not great. And then this year, we don't have any trades as of yet. Oh, sorry, that's not true. He traded Dave Montgomery to the Texans for Scruggs, a 4th, and a 7th. So when I go back through and I read these trades, here's what I see. Brad has traded for players that other teams didn't want. Trinity Benson, Michael Brockers, those kinds of guys. And then he mirrors that same kind of ideology in free agency when he signs guys like Emmanuel Mosley, Marcus Davenport. Like, these are reclamation project kinds of things. And when it comes to like prove it deals or reclamation projects, I would so much rather sign them in free agency than burn a draft pick that I think could be used to better fill out the salary cap and add depth on the roster with young players on cost-controlled contracts. So when I go back and look, he trades up a ton. He has traded up something like 8 times since he's been here and traded down like 3 times. So he's going to trade up 3 times as often as trading down if the pattern holds, right? Now, a lot of the trade-ups are like 3 spots, 5 spots, something like that. They're not like year 2 when he went from 32 to 12, right? That was a major deal. So he's going to use tiny jumps to move up to acquire players that he's targeted that he's not certain are going to fall to him. Here's the issue that I have, though. Where he has had the most success is trading down. the first year he picks up Derek Barnes right after Amon-Ra St. Brown. Then the following in 2023, he comes back and he trades down out of 6. He ends up with Gibbs and the picks that become Gibbs and Laporta. Like he does trade up 3 spots to go get Brian Branch, but that kind of thing. So like to me, I think that Brad is better at trading down and getting value than he is at trading up and getting value. And I would say the only thing that is saving, I think, the fan base from going after Brad pretty badly on this consistent trade-up strategy is that he hit on all the 23 players. Gibbs, Laporta, Campbell, Branch. Campbell's been an all-pro. Laporta has been, I think he was a Pro Bowler in his first year. Like, it's just a lot of value, right? So I'm pretty happy with, if I had to write a synopsis for Brad Holmes, my synopsis would be, you need to draft as often as you can in between the first and second rounds, which sounds like an unbelievably obvious thing to say. But at the same time, like, he's burning up draft capital that he could be using to get like multiple second round picks, out of or whatever. So if I was counseling Brad Holmes, I would say, Brad, go out into free agency and sign these 5 position groups. Go to the draft, and then by day, this is how you're going to spend your resources, and then try and trade down in round 1, because that's the thing that's helped you out the most when it comes to the NFL draft, is being able to pick up an additional player here and there. Like, he has an eye for talent. Like, let's give him more bites at the apple, right? All right, I'm going to do a mock draft, and then I'm going to call it because I have to do some stuff before work. So the draft is coming up here 1 week from today. We have no idea what the Lions are doing. Daniel Jeremiah came out and said that they love Caden Proctor and that it would be a surprise if Proctor made it past the Lions. I don't know how much I believe that, but it's certainly something to consider, and I'm sure the Lions are considering it. Monroe Freeling, Vega Ione, Caden Proctor, Dylan Tianeman, Manuel McNeil-Warren, Blake Miller. What do our trades look like? We only have 1 trade. Oh, wow. We can give up our first, both of our 4ths, and a 5th to pick up Kansas City's 1 and 2. So that would mean we would have 2 picks in the first round. No, we would have 1 pick in the first round, 2 picks in the second round. And it's a pick at 40. I'm going to accept this. So there goes Proctor. There goes Freeling. There goes Ione. Miller's gone. Willie Honicher go? No, Caleb Lomu's right there. Okay, so now I'm going to take Caleb Lomu, and he's our new left tackle, and I'm going to keep Penei Sewell at right. Oh, I'm not sharing the screen. I am so sorry. Yeah, I hate that. So you hit the share screen button, and then you have to come back to this screen where you guys are seeing me right now, and I have to add it, and I hate that. Apologies. So we got Caleb Lomu at 29. Boy, there's some options here. We could take Caleb Banks. We could take Malachi Lawrence. We could take Gabe Yakus. I think I'm going to take Malachi Lawrence here. He's a little bit different pass rusher than Detroit has liked in the past, but I think that's might change. These aren't all my picks, are they? So here we are at 50. Did Yakus go? Yeah, of course he did. Eagles, stupid Eagles turn. So the Lions could draft Keelan Rutledge here. If do you guys? I'd go Banks and hope that Yakus is 50. Well, we could do one more and try for that. So, but Banks is not really a nose tackle, not really a 3 technique, and he broke his foot again at the combine. So, the only reason he's here is because he broke his foot. So, are you comfortable with being like, yeah, okay, this guy's foot's broken twice this season. We want him on the team? Here, I think that I would take I'm going to take Keontae Scott. Yeah. This guy just feels like a Lion to me. Positional versatility with injury, perfect. Yeah. It does sound like a Lion. Oof. I'm all out of coffee. Nope, I got some coffee right here. We don't have a pick for a long time. 181, yeah. Twee. All right, let's speed it up. So ultimately, like in the real world, when the draft actually happens over next weekend, my hope is Detroit walks away with 2 impact players across day 1 and day 2. And then the rest of the draft, I want them to fill out any other 2 position groups. So whether that's tight end, safety, corner, linebacker, whatever it is, I want them to just add multiple bodies at those spots to try and lock them down, for the future. Okay, so here we go. What do we have? We've got Bryce Bocher is a pretty good pick, I think, for us. Yeah, I'm taking. You guys should have seen the draft I had earlier today. It was a thing of beauty. Everybody I wanted was at every pick. Really nice. Let's see who we've taken here. Lomu, Lawrence, Keontae Scott, Bocher. Let's see. I'm not interested in a wide receiver. I think I'm going to take Marlon Klein. And now I think I'm going to take nothing. Oh, how about this kid? Is this the kick returner guy? Yeah, I think this is the kick return. Yeah, okay. So this Caden Wetjen from Iowa, 5'9", 193, not very big. But this guy, go look at his highlight reel. Like, he returned more kicks this year for like crazy value than I've ever seen anybody do it. Like, you might as well. I would like to have him get a shot to bring that same kind of thing to Detroit. If it wasn't just about, if it's about him and his talent, as opposed to like freakish plays that he just happened to make, I would like to be able to tell which of those 2 things he actually brings to the table. And then I'm going to take an interior offensive lineman. Yeah, right here. And that's our draft. So let's take a look at how we did. Lomu Lawrence, Keontae Scott, Bryce Bocher, Marlon Kine, Caden Wetjen, and Pat Coogan. So I think that's a relatively solid draft. I'll do one more here. Oh shoot! We can take Fano. We could take. Well, I don't really like Monroe Freeling. Messador is on the board. Ooh, that's a big trade down. So is that. So is that. I don't like any of those deals. What I'd personally like to see. Have a good one, Joseph. Good to hang out with you. What I'd personally like to see is Detroit walk away with a couple of impact defenders in round 1 and 2. Like, it sounds like they're moving Penei Sewell to left. And Detroit had, with the offensive line that Detroit had last year, they were the 6th most efficient passing attack in the NFL and the 5th highest scoring offense in the NFL. So I feel like we're able to got this here. Yeah. I feel like they were still able to score points, move the ball, and it wasn't. I mean, like clearly the running game wasn't as good, but like, I felt like what was lacking was our ability to make plays on defense. Let's see. Sorry, I seem to be falling asleep, which makes for great content. But yeah, I only got about 3 hours sleep last night, so insomnia. Put this up a little bit here. There we go. I like Emmett Johnson. I think I'm going to take Deontay Lawson here as a linebacker. Let's see. Brennan Thompson was a speed demon at the combine. They're not going to take this DL Xavier Harris. He's had off the field issues. I do kind of like this guy, Dante Corleone, as like a backup nose tackle that can help stuff the run. So let's do that. Ooh. Now I wish I hadn't taken so many defensive linemen. Yakus and Corleone. Okay. Take Carson back. I'm going to take Hezekiah Massis here just to compete on the outside because DJ Reed was not great last year. Plus, he was hurt for a good chunk of it. Arnold's got the kidnapping issue hanging over his head down in Florida. I'm going to take Michael Taft. And that could blow up in his face. And he needs to play well this year in order to have a chance at a second contract. So we're not in a good spot on our corners. We're waiting for Brian Branch to get back from injury so that we can assess whether or not we're going to give him a second contract, which seems almost academic at this point. Take Coogan again. Oh, that was our last pick. So we'll just finish out the draft here real quickly and take a look at how we did. So we took Spencer Fano, Gabe Yakas. Got to be pretty happy about that. Deontay Lawson, Deontay Corleone, a lot of Deontay's in the fourth round there. Hezekiah Massis, Michael Taft, Nate Boerkircher, Fabuichi Nawayu, and Pat Coogan. So I think that the Lions are going to head into this draft process basically with the idea that, like, we want the draft to come to us. And then, if it's getting close, we'll trade up to go get our guy, right? So I do think there's a couple of players that Detroit could trade up for. The name I'm watching right now is Ruben Bain. There's this 2024 driving incident that Brad Holmes said that they were aware of. He didn't say much beyond that, whether he thought it was good or bad or what the situation was. But, like, it seems to be a relatively non-issue, but could it still affect some teams not draft Bain? All right, if he made it past Cincinnati at 10, would Detroit consider a trade up for pairing Bain with Aiden Hutchinson for the next 5 years? So, like, I think that's something I'd be watching. I don't think it's likely by any stretch of the imagination, but I would be watching that. So, anyways, I'm going to call it there. It's about an hour. Thank you guys for stopping by. I had a couple of good conversations. And please join us once again this coming Monday at 7 right here on the show for our multi-man 2-round mock draft. And then, stay safe, stay happy. See you soon. Bye.